really well that the defense played hard but needed to play faster. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think our guys give great effort. Their intent is to give great effort. But when you talk about playing fast, especially in the second half, it comes down to diagnostics of reading plays, determining is it run, is it pass. Because obviously when it's run, we want them going. When it's pass, we want them playing coverage. So that's just something I think we need to keep talking about. Like I said, I think we're always in the mindset of we want them to play hard, physical, execute at a high level, and play for each other. But sometimes there's like a subset of that effort, which I think is just playing fast and trusting what you see and going. And really, especially in the run game and in some of the pass games, rush stuff. I mean, I think from a pass coverage stuff, you could clearly see, they couldn't throw the ball, didn't have an interest to. They came out in the second half, and it looked like he said to himself, I don't really know what they're doing coverage-wise, so I'm just going to take off and run. But that's kind of what I mean by that.
What do you see out of guys and just how they process their first game film? Like, because Coach Rule mentioned, like, he had the guys kind of grade themselves before he came back and looked at it again, and just how they kind of took it in their first time out there.
Right. Them grading themselves is actually a standard operating procedure here. They grade themselves in the scrimmages, and they grade themselves every game. So you want to make sure that what you're trying to establish is a culture of, I'm going to be harder on myself than my coaches can possibly be on me in terms of technique, fundamentals, execution, how hard am I playing, how physical am I playing. So that's something, when I got here last year, that was just, this program's done that under Matt. So I think it's a critical piece of self-evaluation, and then realizing that, you really get better in practice, but the games from week to week, I think we'll start to show some tremendous growth in how we're playing, because we do have a young defense in certain areas. And I think that now the time on task when they're in school and the meeting time can be a little bit more focused on each guy's individual development. So I think that that's going to be an area that the intent is you're going to get better as the season goes along. Anybody that says you don't is a fool. So we're focused on getting better in all those areas.
Coach, how would you evaluate the play of your interior defensive line, and what would you like to see moving forward from those guys?
I think you guys heard me say it last week when I said the defensive line, like, it's not a thinking man's position. It's a get off the ball, create a new line of scrimmage, get off blocks, make tackles, be disruptive. I think sometimes at times we were a little bit too fit oriented, meaning like, am I in the right place? Or maybe the processing wasn't going as fast, but your D-line has got to be a bunch of guys that just freaking go and think about things later. And I don't mean play reckless. I'm just talking about getting off the ball, creating a new line of scrimmage, and I think that's something we're going to be preaching with all of our front guys from now until the final game of the season.
On that D-line, Riley Van Poppel's a guy we heard about a lot in the spring and the offseason, got a single digit. What do you need to see more from him to take it to the next level?
I think it just comes down to three things. It comes down to, is he playing as hard as he thinks he can? And then we got to make sure if that's how hard you think you can play, we're going to get you to play harder. Physicality at the line of scrimmage, getting off blocks. I think with all of these guys, we're not singling out anybody. You just happen to ask about one of them. That's to me where our biggest step in week to week has got to be, from week 1 to week 2, is our ability to get off the ball and get off blocks, because that's what really the run game is all about. Whatever call that's made, it's getting your hands on the blocker, getting off the blocker, getting to the ball carrier. So that's I think something we're going to be emphasizing with our front seven, really the front six.
What jumped out about Donovan Jones to just, I know you kind of moved him at safety at one point, then moved him back to corner. His ability to kind of move around and just adapt to wherever he is.
Well, the first thing, when we're evaluating players at each position, we want big, fast, physical, and tough. And that's what he is. I mean, he's a 200-pound corner. He tackles like a linebacker. He's got a processing element to him that he plays fast, that he plays well in games. So you're able to play a kid like that at corner for however many snaps he played. And then at dime, he's covering their best receiver in the slot. So I just think that when we're evaluating the players we want to put on the field, coaches talked about find the winners and get them on the field. Well, we feel like we have two pretty good corners in Sierra and Marshall. So we think Donnie's one of those guys that's a winner. So just like Marshall and Sierra, I think they're three of our better players on defense. And so if you only have two positions, it's your job as a coach to find a way to get that guy on the field. So we're going to constantly be trying to figure out whoever those players are that play well and practice well week to week. The system's going to evolve, and it's going to be built around the players that are playing hard, that are playing physical, that are executing at a high level, that are doing it for their teammates. And thankfully, I'm experienced enough that our system's going to be built around them. It's not going to be pigeonholed into, oh, this is what we do, and we're gonna evolve to having who we think are the best 11 players on the field, and that's a process that we're still working through. And Donnie obviously has shown to be capable to be one of those players.
I just feel like your linebackers play. Do you consider Singleton a linebacker, or is he still kind of a safety?
Yeah, he's a safety, but like obviously, we use it systematically, whether it's Deshaun or Marquise or whoever it is. Like we're going to get and need sometimes that extra player in the box at the second level, which you could characterize, well, he's in the safety room, but he's a second level player, so he's got to understand linebacker play. You know, I think that each one of those guys, obviously, Javen made a huge play on the screen right before half, and then Vincent Shavers made a game-changing play that set up a touchdown, gave our offense a short field, and our offense turned it into 7 points. That's a huge play before the half that, as we talk about winning the middle eight all the time, so we got to stop in 2 minutes, and our offense got the ball back to start the half. So I think those two guys, in terms of the plays that they made, the run game fits, and the consistency in the run game just needs to keep coming. But obviously there's two winning plays in that regard.
I know you guys preach next play mentality. Is what Malcolm did, is that the ultimate teach tape in that, getting the penalty? And then
Yeah, I think it is, in that you got the penalty. He also, he got beat on a cover 5 early. I mean, in that drive, and you just got to keep playing, and winning is hard no matter what. Everybody thinks winning is just about magic. There's a certain team that always should beat this team, and that's just not how college football works, especially when you've had the whole offseason to prepare for a ball game. So you have to play each play as it is for that play, and knowing that I'm just going to put myself in position. And then he did a great job of disguising him, did a great job of kind of, I don't want to say use the word baiting, but forcing the quarterback to throw the ball where he didn't want to. And then when he did that, now you still got to go and make the play. How many times have you seen it where guys have put themselves in the position over the weekend to make the play, and the ball's dropped, and then the outcome totally changes? So, I think, yes, that's a great testament that at the end of the day, once that play's over, you move on to the next one. And we can learn from that too. I definitely can learn from that. Sometimes I hang on a call that I didn't like, that I made, or a result of a play sometimes irritates me. It's just in my nature. But we all got to keep working on that next play and remaining neutral and putting ourselves in position to win the next play.
How did you, when you look back at that game, you look at that, they turned up the tempo late. What was your assessment of that? How you guys reacted?
I think our overall assessment of the game is that, I think I mentioned it to you guys last week. Early on, can they block us? Early on, can we cover them? Early on, can we tackle them? I knew right away that we could cover them. I had concerns because there was mentions about all these new transfer wideouts and who are they, where they come from, and we saw them on tape, but we don't know until we play them. I felt pretty consistent. We could cover them. We could affect the quarterback with our coverage. Tackling them, we tackled the backs and the receivers better as the game got along. And then the biggest concern, as I think I mentioned to you last week, was the quarterback just turning the game into like a high school football game, which that's no criticism of him. But in the second half, I think he realized that, however many yards they had, they didn't have many. And he said, I'm going to get back there, and if a guy I'm looking at's open, I'm going to throw it to him. If not, I'm taking off, which is what he did. And so that's a hard thing to manage. We got to be more disciplined in our rush lanes. I could be more helpful in how I was calling the game, maybe adding a fifth rusher. So in that regard, I think that's kind of how the game evolved. It was a weird second half, in that they had 0 explosive plays in the whole game except for the 29-yard scramble, which is a key factor in winning. We had 2 takeaways. They had none, which is a huge factor in winning. Some of those leaky rush yards were quarterback driven, which when you do the math, when the quarterback runs, that means you're post safety or somebody else has got to get involved, or somebody's got to whip somebody's tail and get off a block. And that's the next step for us. So that second half was just a little weird in that there was really no rhythm or vibe to the game. It was really just a quarterback getting the ball and him kind of freelancing. I was joking with a friend of mine. It reminded me of my old teammate, Jack Stanzak from LaSalle. He would just catch the ball, and he was a better athlete than everybody, so he just would run and get 200 yards rushing, and we'd win the game, and I'd be like, what is that? So that was kind of how that game was. I thought that kid was a great competitor, was big, strong, and we just made one more play at the end to win the game.
How do you balance?
Coach, you'll be home until October 11th.
Right.
How big will that be just for this defense to have the home crowd? You had the crowd lift you at times
Right.
before false start penalties.
Yeah, I think obviously the crowd helped us in that game on third down specifically. in that it put them behind the chains a little further than they were on third down, which then allowed us to adjust our call. 3rd and 4 is a much harder down to call than 3rd and 9. And then I've been in this environment just one time, and I was fortunate enough to be in an environment in Buffalo where the home crowd really, really helps the defense. But at the end of we just have to focus on doing our job and not really play to the crowd, because the better you play, the more plays you make, the harder you play, the more physical you play, the more better you execute, the crowd's going to be behind you the whole time, and you're going to have that at your disposal. So we want the crowd to be as loud as possible, especially on 3rd down, to force that quarterback, whoever the quarterback is, to execute and communicate, and to allow us to play to our strengths, which is rushing and coveraging.
How do you balance making the adjustments that you need against the things that hurt you in that game, considering that you probably aren't going to see a whole lot of quarterbacks who are that aggressive with their feet moving forward?
Right. I think we have to. So football is a game of what does the opponent do on the film, and then it's also a component of what does offenses do against us. And offensive coordinators, usually the ones that I've been around, the first thing they look at when they play a defense is they go, let me see the explosive plays they gave up. Let me see the touchdowns they gave up. Let me see the 3rd down, whatever it is. And they will put that play in if they don't have it, or if they have it, they'll put it to the top of their chart. So quarterback, like, what are you going to tell the quarterback? Hey, listen, guys, if nobody's open, just take off and scramble, because they had 90-something yards in quarterback scrambles. So we have to be alert that mobile quarterbacks are going to take off. And this quarterback we're playing this week, while not doing it last week a lot, if you look at his film in previous places and his previous year's film, he will run. So we have to continue to make that a point of emphasis where we're going to rush like wildfire, but we have to keep the quarterback in the pocket, because when the quarterback sits in the pocket and throws the ball, like I just said, I think that's going to play to some of our strengths with our back seven and our secondary. So I think it's a balance, of what we think they're going to do based on their film against Wyoming, and then maybe some of the things they may put in wrinkle-wise that they may think hurt us, which we're always keeping that in mind.
Going back to the home stretch, just how much more helpful is it with this young defense in terms of just working on improvement, being at home, not having to worry about travel for these first few weeks?
Yeah, I think anytime you're home, you're just more comfortable, right? You're staying in your own apartment, you're staying in your own home, or you're staying in your own dorm. You're not traveling, you're not in and out of an airplane or a bus and in and out of meetings on the road. I just think you get into a nice rhythm. And I think the next thing for our guys in season is getting into a routine. Players like to get into a routine of, I'm up at this time, I go to class, I go to school, come back for football, I do my treatment, and there's a rhythm to it. So if you can establish that rhythm, good players establish that routine, and they're doing the same thing every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And obviously not having to travel on Fridays helps as well. But at the end, we are just so focused on getting better at a lot of different things, the core principles of our defense, and I think that as the season goes, you're going to see that development in our guys.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.